I've never understood Phaneuf's contract. It's bizarre. It's ridiculous. And I know you guys will jump all over me because I like Phil Kessel. I understand Phil Kessel's. Absolutely, I understand Phil Kessel's contract.
Not on an 8-year deal, Frank. I like him.
Okay, maybe 8 years wrong, but I think Phil Kessel's brilliant. I think he's a great player, and I think he needs two really good line mates to really bring out the best in him. Gretzky was very successful as a hockey player, and don't jump all over me. I'm not trying to compare Kessel to Gretzky, but he was very successful because he had some of the most powerful line mates in the world.
Well, he had protection, but he was also head and shoulders smarter than Kessel ever thought of being.
He's probably one of the smartest hockey players in the history of the game.
Yeah.
By the way, the Phaneuf deal is like 7 years, $49 million. So I don't know how you can get rid of a contract like that, because if it's going to happen, you've had it with him for after 1 year. Shanahan says, we don't want him as a captain, we don't want him on our team. Bill, how do you get rid of a contract like that?
You could get rid of a contract a million ways, and Billy's way smarter than me in this. The way you get rid of product is you make it very, very attractive. So I'm just saying, I don't know what his contract is. I'm just talking out of the top of my ass. Let's say it's a $5 million contract. He goes to another team who needs somebody like a Phaneuf, and they'll say, listen, he'll cost you $1.5 million a year. We'll pick up the rest.
No, but you can't, Frank. You're limited to picking up only $1 million a year. It's a 15%.
Well, I'm sure that they can get creative, Billy. Rules are rules, and they're great, and rules are made to keep some sort of social consistency in place. But everybody finds a way. There's tax havens, there's tax shelters, and in any rule, there's always a way to break it legally.
Yeah, well, as long as you don't get caught by Bettman, because he's very, very stern on that.
I'm not talking about breaking it. I was being facetious. I'm talking about taking a look at the rule and working within the rule, right? Within the parameters without being completely blatant. I don't know if I'm trying to say, I'm trying to articulate what I'm saying. There is a way to get rid of Phaneuf. If the Maple Leaf organization would get rid of Phaneuf, could get rid of Phaneuf.
Yeah, I hope you're right, Frank. I don't agree with you, but
I'm 100%. I'm 100%. I believe 100% on that.
Well, if you want to get rid of Phaneuf, and you'll take as much as you can take of the salary, which is $1 million a year. You go from 49 to 43. Now that's the liability, and the Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment extend a $49 million loan to the team that takes them, and they can pay the Leafs back $1 million or $7 million a year for 7 years. That is the only way you can get rid of that stiff.
Well, you know what? I really don't want to dwell on Phaneuf. I mean, Phaneuf is just a part of the puzzle of the many. I think they need, and you guys can jump all over me, I think they have a huge problem in goaltending.
Well, they're hoping they don't. But, Frank, what it says, and we've mentioned the three. We haven't mentioned Clarkson. That was the other. But there were other general managers that wanted to sign Clarkson. But Nonis wanted him in the worst way. It's a terrible contract. Phaneuf is a terrible contract. Kessel is not nearly as terrible as it is.
I think Kessel will be. He's a young guy, and I still think he has a lot of shining that he can do for the Leaf organization, in my modest view. And I could be wrong. I think he's brilliant. I think he's very talented. I would bet on Kessel. I wouldn't bet on Phaneuf. Can I tell you the determining factor for me for Phaneuf? It's like being in a relationship, and it's a strained relationship to begin with, and then all of a sudden something happens, a small, minute thing that totally turns you off, where you really can't deal with that person anymore. And I got to tell you, my relationship as a fan with Kessel came to a complete end when one of his teammates had taken a massive hit behind the net, and he skated off the ice. A captain should not do that. I've played organized hockey since the age of 7. Yeah. Captains don't do that. There's a lot of cliches. Captain goes down with the ship. And that kind of showed me what kind of captain he was. You guys remember that incident?
Yes. Yes, and it was...
Am I wrong in my total turnoff of that individual?
No, that's just a list. As long as you're armed, Frank, it's one of the things that... He's a very... And I don't even know him, so I shouldn't say this, but I know based on his personality and people that do, he's a selfish, self-centered, egomaniacal, reasonable...
But how can you be that as a captain? Can you teach me that? How can you be that as a leader?
He didn't appoint himself captain. That was one of Burke's major gaffes. Major gaffes. The other one was taking him. There wasn't 20. There was 30 teams in the league. Calgary didn't want him, and there were 28 others that didn't want him. But there was one that got him, and that was Toronto. Not only did they get him, Burke made him the captain. It was a series of bad deals.
They have the option, where, Frank, you mentioned about one scenario. They have the option with Dion Phaneuf is they could send him to the minors. They're going to have to live with some of that contract, but there's a way to possibly get themselves out of that contract.
I just think two things are going to happen this year. Either Phaneuf is going to really pull up his socks and have an epiphany and maybe pull a complete fucking U-turn on his style and his opinion of anybody other than himself, because that's what happens when you're self-centered and selfish. You only have an opinion of yourself, and you don't care about anybody else. So that might change. But, I'm going to leave this to the power of the great Shanahan. I think that he's proven. I think today he took out the laser out and showed the world that this guy, he's not fucking around. And anybody who thought that Shanahan was going to be inconsistent or impudent as the powers that they gave him is mistaken. This guy's the real deal.